welcome back to another episode. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Um, I appreciate everyone that comes in and supports the podcast. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to have a chat about some of the sort of biggest news lines that have come out of the MMA world. And I think the biggest one right now isn't actually about fighting or a fight. It's the fact that Jake Paul is now promoting MMA, not just with MVP, but obviously he has um, merged with the PFL, which I think is amazing for the PFL, um, just to get more eyes to the events. Um, he- we have to like admit that Jake Paul is like the best self promoter in all of like combat sports, right? Like insane, like it's absolutely insane what he's done. Um, you know, can he fix what's going wrong with the PFL in terms of like viewership and building stars, or is it just like another expensive sort of rebrand? We don't know. I guess we'll have to see. I also want to talk about Usman Nurmagomedov, and his last performance was insane. I mean, he looked unbelievable, and now he's a free agent. Uh, Like, what's he going to do? Is he going to move to the UFC? Is he going to stay with the PFL now that Jake Paul's brought it on? Like, what should he do, or what is his plan? Um, Also, we got the EFC this weekend. We got Sanchez versus Swanepoel for the lightweight title as the main event. So we'll be touching on that, and then obviously Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry. So I think the first thing we should talk about is this PFL and MVP merge. Um, like can can Jake Paul fix the problem of the PFL? Because right now you've got the UFC, which is like obviously the monster, the machine. And if you're in the UFC and you're fighting um, on main cards, like you are very well known. Everyone's going to know who you are. There's no confusion as to like where you fight, who you are, what you do. It's very much like your story gets told. And I think the biggest problem is that the PFL has had definitely doesn't lack talent. Like there's so many amazing fighters in the PFL, and they definitely don't lack investment. There's definitely money in the PFL. Um, but the problem is there's no the storytelling, right? So there's no like storytelling that like um, creates the audience that is required to keep fans or keep viewers or keep people like invested in watching the fights. Um, and I think that's going to be the biggest potential change that Jay could maybe bring into the PFL would be sort of the storytelling aspect of that, where it's more about building stars and building these tales of these fighters rather than just, oh, here's a great card with some great fights, but like fucking no one's watching. So I hope that happens. The some of the other problems that the PFLs run into is they keep changing their formats, and their branding and their strategies and stuff like that. Like when I first heard of the PFL, it was like a straight tournament format, like points and whatever. And then they started moving away from that. Then they bought Bellator, and then it was like, okay, now you got champions versus champions, and it's all very confusing. And I think as like a fight fan or fight what viewer, like trying to follow which set of rules is going on this week, it's also like a bit confusing. It's a bit difficult to sort of keep track of. Like even me, like I'm within the space, and like I'm like, fuck, when is the next event? And then I see it like the day before, and I'm like, oh shit, it's tomorrow. Um, so it'd be good to maybe see if he can direct it into more of a yeah, something that like we can all hear about and we all know about, and we get more eyes watching, so that we actually have someone that can legitimately contend with the UFC. Because right now it's actually a fucking joke. Like no one's even close with like contending against the UFC. Um, like, will he be able to provide like a clear identity to the PFL, or to the merger, or whatever they're going to call it, or they're just going to throw on some more fucking branding, Yeah, like the PFL, what the PFL has done is that they've taken the concept of like, this is a sport, and these guys need to be treated like sportsmen and women, um, and paid accordingly, right? So like, historically, they have paid fighters competitively, um, especially because obviously the roster isn't as massive as like the UFC, for instance. So you can obviously get better purses and better payments. Um, they also sign like high level talent. Yes, some guys will argue like maybe it's at the end of certain guys' careers, but there are guys that like Usman Nurmagomedov, who is not at the end of his career and he's like in his prime. You got guys like AJ McKee, who are like monsters. Um, these guys are all, you got Dakota, she's probably like arguably one of the best female fighters of all time, in my opinion, or she's becoming one of the best of all time. So you can't say that it's only guys that at the end of their career that go to the PFL. Like, I think Usman, AJ, and Dakota could all become UFC champions for sure. Um, so they are signing like high level talent, and they are providing great opportunities outside of the UFC, especially like if you don't want to go and like fight like some obscure promotion in like the Middle East or like in Asia, or you don't want to go fight ONE FC, and like deal with all that, and they have contract strategies and stuff like that. Notoriously bad contracts. Um, and also the PFL provides like international exposure into the American market, which is what I'm kind of like leaning towards. You need to get these fighters into an American market so that they can make commercial money. Like, that's just that's where fighters make the most money, is commercial contracts, not fighting contracts. And the only way to do that is to get on that US TV screen, baby. Um, and the other thing that PFL has done is given a bunch of athletes bargaining power now, because you've got a guy like Usman now who is a free agent. The offers he must have in his email right now must be crazy. He definitely has an offer from the UFC for sure. The PFL definitely don't want to lose him. So by having the PFL, it's already created this like bit of competition where now guys can actually start asking for exactly what they want. And I know that's why Dakota stayed on. She's getting paid so much money from the PFL that it actually doesn't make sense to go to the UFC, which is exactly what you want, But now there are things that they have struggled with, like inconsistent storytelling. We, like I said, there's like a few people we can name off the top of our heads that are in the PFL. The rest are like obscure. We don't really know who they are. We don't know anything about them. There's some guys that have fought in the PFL like multiple seasons and like don't have any following. It's crazy. It's crazy because with fighting is such like an emotional sport that you have to build that emotional investment with the people that are watching, and so I think that's what they've really have struggled with. And again, we're going back to like changing formats and stuff. Like, people can understand the fighter or build a relationship with the fighter, but they don't understand the promotion. They don't understand like which direction it's going. Like, it makes things very, very difficult. Now this merger, they claim that it's going to be fighter first. Now, what does that mean? What does fighter first mean? Now, I know if I was running a promotion and I was saying fighter first, the the most important thing, number one, would be taking care of the fighters in terms of medical bills, safety, and then purses. Making sure that guys have good purses, that it's worthwhile stepping in there to fight, and not better to go be a waitress or waiter. Like, it sense. You're risking your body, you're risking literally your lifespan, because getting hit in the head repeatedly will shorten your lifespan. That's just the way it is. Are they going to have more transparent contracts? Like I believe, like these exclusive contracts where it's just like, okay, you signed with us for X amount of years. It's just insane. It just doesn't make sense. There should be some leeway where, like, if you can't offer me a fight, that doesn't mean that I don't fight for you. But if this guy offers me a fight, I should be able to go fight there and go make my money and go fight. Um, there has to be there has to be some bargaining where it's like, okay, well, if you don't want to offer me a fight in November and this promotion does, can you offer me a fight or no? Or can you match what they're wanting to pay me or no? And I think there has to be some transparency with the contracts. Can't just be like, oh, here's your 6-5 contract for fucking 4 years and sweet, that's it. We own you now. Like that's not how it works. There also needs to be better athlete promotion. Like you have to promote the athletes that you think are going to become stars, or the ones that are potential stars already. Like you have to do that. You have to build these guys. You have to build these guys into something that, like, people get excited about. Or stories. Find out a story about them that you're going to get excited about. And it's yeah. Another massive one, which I think like everyone is forgetting about, is like access to sponsorship. I totally get from a branding perspective with these companies that want to have kits. Like the UFC has like a kit, and the PFL has a kit, and then that's cool. And then they allow you to put like certain sponsors onto. You have certain spots to sell to a sponsor, which is cool. I totally get that. That's fine. But how much access are they going to have to sponsorship? I think like if a um, clothing like an apparel company is sponsoring, like I know they did that with the UFC, where fighters get X amount per fight on their contract, depending on their contract, to fight in the kit. And so there has to be something in it for the fighter to, like, now say, okay, cool, I'm not going to get clothing or an apparel sponsor to fight in your event, to fight in your promotion, but you're going to get an apparel sponsor and I get zero money from that. Like, there has to be some sort of access to sponsorship. There also needs to be better control of image rights. I think like the promotion owning all the rights of your image is crazy. It's just like a crazy thing. Now I understand there are like contracts that they do with certain like photography companies or photographers, that they take the photo, so it's their photo. But at some point it needs to be like, but it's me that you're taking a photo of. It's me that the image is of. So I should be able to use my own image wherever I can. There needs to be some more control of image rights for sure. And there needs to also be easier releases from contracts if you are inactive. If you can't get fights or you're not getting booked fights, there needs to be an open conversation to be like, look, you guys can't get me matchups. No one wants to fight me. This promoter, this person says they can get me fights. So can I please be released? And without it being like a big fucking story. And then, like I said already, medical and post-career support. Like some sort of medical aid contribution, or if a fighter gets injured, having like some sort of contingency plan to take care of the fighter without it becoming their cost. Especially like pre-fight, during fights, and then post-fight. So like a lot of the times it's like, yeah, if you get knocked the fuck out and you go to hospital, we'll take care of you until you're done at the hospital, and then when you leave the hospital, it's on you. So if you like break your leg like Conor McGregor, and they'll take care of you, have the operation in the hospital, send you out, but now you've got like rehab, you've got physio, you've got all that shit, you've got checkups, all that shit that now you have to pay for, and that's expensive. So those types of things need to also be that is truly fighter first, taking care. And then pre-fight. So like in the training camp, if I sign a fight to fight in 10 weeks, and in the training camp I get injured and I get hurt where I have to withdraw from the fight, there needs to be some sort of assistance with medical medicals there. I believe. I think like if you're truly gonna be fighter first and you're really gonna be like saying that you're fighter first promotion, then it's like, okay, well, I was training to compete in your promotion. I then broke my fucking ribs, and now I have 12 weeks of, rehabilitation. Like somewhere I need some assistance there. Like that there should be something there, I think. And then obviously after the fight, and then post career, like when you retire, you know, like how many fighters are out there with like CTE, undiagnosed CTE, long term injuries that they have to like manage now for the rest of their life after fighting for a promotion for, you know, 5 to 10 years. And now it's just like, okay, well, hopefully you made enough money, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like it's yeah, it's crazy. Fighter first can't just mean paying one or two like stars really well. You know, it has to describe how the entire roster is treated, not just the two guys at the top that like bring all the crowds. Everyone needs to be treated because then that's truly fighter first. You know, um, Jake may help the PFL like attract attention, which is great, but attention just gets people through the door. Um, competition, matchmaking, production, and consistent athlete storytelling. That is what's really going to keep people there. And I think I really, really, really hope that is the direction that the guys go, and that we can start really seeing these two sort of powerhouses of MMA come up and bring up the whole sort of MMA fighter treatment and fighter promotion business. Not just the UFC is the only place you got to go. Now, Usman Nurmagomedov. For those of you that didn't see his fight, he dismantled his opponents, stopping him with a TKO, like head kick, hurt him, finished up with some punches, beautiful, beautiful stuff. He finished Archie Colgan in the first round. I mean, it was not even, it was perfect. Now, the biggest question is, does he stay with the PFL and become like the star of the PFL? Nurmagomedov, that name carries weight. So wherever you go in any promotion, you can have that name that's going to carry weight. Or does he take less money and go to the UFC to become the UFC champion, chase the glory? It's a difficult thing, It depends what his primary goals are. If he stays, the potential for making more money is higher. Because if you only have a finite amount of stars, you're willing to pay them more money because you need them to bring viewers. Whereas the UFC has potentially unlimited amounts of stars, potentially. And so they don't necessarily need to pay you well now, especially when you come in. You're gonna come in on like, basic bitch salary. Not like you are already the star at this promotion. So the first reason for staying would be obviously money. The second reason could be you're already a champion. You are the champion. You don't need to go now and go into another pool and work your way up to being another champion when you are already a champion. That also provides bigger promotional leverage. You are the champ, which means now you can, have a bit of leverage in the promotion and start asking for things that maybe you want. And same thing for when you want to get signed to the UFC. You're gonna be able to say, well, why would I leave this amount or this position where I'm the champion? I get certain things, that certain benefits. I get paid well. Like, why would I leave? You have to convince me to leave. He also has more control over matchmaking for sure if he's fighting in the PFL. When you go to the UFC, control over matchmaking becomes, the UFC's problem. So it would be interesting to see if he stays, or if he decides to go to the UFC. Now he's in a deeper talent pool, and so testing himself against like a deeper talent pool could be something that he wants to do. He also will, like we've spoken about already, get more recognition in terms of like who he is. But we don't know. We don't know if now with this merger, if that will change. So he could be thinking the same thing. Like now Jake Paul's bought it. There's going to be more eyes. maybe I can become the star, make a lot of money, fight in the place that I'm already the champion? Or do I go to the UFC where I know I can get greater recognition, probably take a salary cut, and have to fight harder fights? It has definitely, it's definitely the sort of legacy bonus to going to the UFC. But yeah, I mean, like, I, it's a tricky situation. It's a great situation for him to be in because he has so many options. A lot of things fighters don't normally have is these options. From my opinion, I always think like a fighter has a very limited earning window, and so as legacy doesn't pay for retirement and injuries. Like you can have a great legacy, like yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, what does legacy mean, really? What does legacy mean? Yes, you can be like Khabib, who was the greatest of all time in the lightweight division, and then you leave, and luckily enough, he made a lot of money too, and that's great. But there's a lot of guys that have made it to the legacy of lightweight champion or welterweight champion or heavyweight champion that they chose the legacy that have nothing to show for it today and are, basically fucked. So yeah, legacy doesn't always pay the bills. From my perspective, it's not always the thing that's gonna save you when your career eventually does end. Now the other thing is that UFC, being in the UFC and having that like prestige around you attracts long-term commercial like opportunities. Like that is just a fact. If you're in the top 10 or you become a UFC champion, the commercial opportunities that you have are massive. You're going to sign big deals and you're going to make good money. So, but that is a very, very small percentage of the people that are in the UFC that make it to that point. So, like, you better fucking hope you make it to that point or have something else. Not all fighters have the same goals, so it'd be interesting to see what he makes a decision. If he chooses UFC, then we know that his goal is legacy. He wants to go and follow like Khabib's pathway, Islam's pathway, and make it to UFC champion, and hopefully make as much money as possible on the way. If he stays with the PFL and MVP, then we know that his goal is obviously to make as much money as possible, which I think is a smart choice for a fighter. You are fighting, you are putting your health on the risk for money. That is what you're doing. Make as much money as you can. That's the way. Fans always demand legacy and say, oh no, but you gotta fight for the title. It's like, but they're not the ones getting fucking punched in the face. They're not the one that's paying for the bills when the career ends. So, it's not necessarily the best choice for everybody. In my opinion, and if I was in his position where he is, and he has such a strong position, I would definitely look at staying with the PFL and MVP and using that sort of champion and star status to make as much possible money and get that sort of finger in the pie of matchmaking and stuff like that, where he can now start sort of picking his opponents and really building his story. Take 3 or 4 more fights, make a whole lot of money, and then still have the opportunity to go to the UFC. The UFC is always going to be there for him. He's a Nurmagomedov, and as long as he doesn't lose, which I don't think he's going to, he's always going to have that option. So that would be my opinion, is stick with the PFL for now, re-sign another contract, make a bunch of money, and then maybe go to the UFC if you still want to chase that legacy. I'm interested to see what he does. It's going to be very telling. Now, this Thursday, so in 2 days, today's Tuesday, 2 days, we're having the EFC, which is headlined by Adrian Sanchez, and he's fighting Bradley Swanepoel for the main event for the lightweight title. It's an interesting matchup because Adrian was supposed to fight Martin van Staden, and then Martin pulled out due to an injury that he's obviously been struggling with. Um, which I believe that he should this fight should be for the lightweight title, not the interim lightweight title, because if you're a champion, you haven't fought for 2 years because of injuries, while there's another guy that has been fighting, like you have to also just be like, can't hold up the division and say, well, like, I want to hold on to my belt. Vacate the title, let the guys fight for the belt, and when you're ready to come, you will get your title shot and you can go and try and win. So that's like what I think the EFC should be pushing, to be like, hey, listen, you haven't fought in 2 years, you can't hold up the division, we can't keep guys fighting for interim belts. Like, let's just give the Oaks a chance. The way that I see this fight going now, you've got Bradley Swanepoel, who is primarily a grappler, jiu-jitsu style grappler. And then you've got Sanchez, who is an all-rounder, but predominantly like a power puncher, knockout puncher. How does this fight play out? Now, obviously, this is a little bit biased because I have a personal relationship with Adrian Sanchez. Obviously, I manage him as well, so I do have a biased opinion. So I'm going to start with what Bradley would need to do. The reality is that if his wrestling isn't up to par to the point where he can take Sanchez down consistently, and not just take him down, hold him down consistently without relying on necessarily always getting to the back or having to play off his back in guard. If he can figure out a way to do that, or if he's prepared to be able to do that for 5 rounds, or potentially work to get the submission, that would be to his favor, for sure. Now, do I think he's going to be able to do that against Sanchez, take him down repeatedly and hold him down? Now, that's a different story. I don't know. I don't think he has the wrestling pedigree to be able to do that. Yes, jiu-jitsu on the ground, for sure. He's very skilled, specifically on the back. When he gets on the back, he does really, really well. Will he be able to do that against Sanchez? I don't know. I think it's going to be tricky. And on the feet, we just know that Sanchez is gonna definitely hurt him. I definitely see that Sanchez has the striking and possibly the wrestling advantage, the striking and the wrestling advantage, and I do see that Bradley has the grappling or the jiu-jitsu submission advantage. So it'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see how this fight plays out, but I see Sanchez stopping him within 3 rounds because of strikes. That's my opinion. And we've seen Sanchez like sort of take off in the last couple of years. He had a fight overseas, so he fought in Dubai and he won against a very, very good opponent from Kazakhstan. Came back, won the lightweight interim title. He's now going to defend it. He's really like coming into his own now, and he's really got like some good confidence and good like momentum. And I would like to see him defend this title, maybe defend it one more time, and then start looking. Maybe we can have another international matchup at the EFC or an international fight somewhere else. Who knows? It's an interesting position for him right now. He's got a lot of opportunities. And I will be doing a follow up to this podcast about the results. So we'll see if I'm right. If I'm right, well, I think I'm right. I think he's going to stop him within 3 rounds. I think his striking is going to be too much, and he's not going to be able to take him down. So that's my prediction right now. Let's see if I'm right next week, and we'll see. Let me know if you think I'm right or if you think I'm wrong. Give me your prediction down in the comments, because I want to see. I want to see your MMA knowledge. Let's see. Now, the bigger discussion is EFC the primary destination for SF local fighters, or is it a development platform? Yeah. Now, that is a pretty big conversation, because when the EFC first came out, it was like I mean, I know when I was fighting, there was like you wanted to be in the EFC, like you really wanted to be there. Like the production was awesome, the shows were awesome. You're fighting at like Grand West, you're fighting at all these like arenas. Um, it was exciting to be there. You were on Super Sport, you were getting paid pretty good back then. Um, it was something that you wanted to do, and the only time you would leave is if the UFC came. Because obviously, like to compete with how much the UFC can pay, it's just it's just not you're not going to compete locally. Um, and so back like is that where we are right now? Um, I think one of the strategies that they have taken, which I don't necessarily agree with, is pushing guys to fight for titles way too soon. So you get guys that you can see that are like potential stars. Guys that like have good knockout power. They're exciting. Everyone wants to watch them. They've got a good fan base. Like people like are keen. And they've had 4 fights and they fight for a title. And now they're the champ. And now every single fight that you have next is going to be the number one contender. And it's just like you shorten that sort of star status, because as soon as they lose, now they've lost, and now it's like a mark on their record, and like they're no longer the champ, and now they got to work back up. And it just becomes this thing of like constantly trying to get back to where you were, rather than building up the star where you get to like 8, 10 and 0, 8 to 10 and 0, and you're like this mythical creature. And maybe you've won a title, and now we start looking at like the international scene and where we're going to go from there. That's that's kind of like the mistake that I've seen in the past, like pushing these guys to fight for titles too soon, and then making a bunch of wishy-washy champions that like aren't like international level champions, guys that are like okay, you know. So that's kind of like what I've seen the mistake. And I understand like maybe there's the talent pool isn't that deep, so you kind of have to make it happen. But like, as a fan, I would rather see a bunch of fucking exciting fights than a bunch of title fights. Like you don't have to have title fights every fucking event. You know what I mean? I'd rather just see really good matchups. Two guys that would make a good matchup, and let them fight and see where that plays out. Especially if you have a star and you want to sort of showcase that star power, giving him a favorable matchup to someone that will test him, but it's a good matchup stylistically for him. That's how you like develop these like guys with aura, like a prospect shouldn't be facing like super experienced opposition, like in his first, 5 to 8 fights. It should be, guys sort of at that sort of same experience level. Within reason, obviously. Like if you got a guy who's like 2 and 8, and he's had 10 fights, and you 2 and 0, like yeah, you take that fight because the guy can't win. So yeah, it's an interesting place that and I did have a discussion about it recently, and it's a difficult place to be in, because you as the EFC, it's like you want to keep the stars, right? But the reality is the only way to keep the stars is to pay them. Like if you get to 6 and 0 and now you're the champion, and like you get an offer to fight somewhere else, they're gonna pay you better. But then the flip side of that, so like obviously you're gonna take the opportunity to go fight somewhere else and make more money. But the flip side of that is like the EFC is like, well, we want to pay the guys better, but we want to pay them better as an investment to keep them at the EFC, to keep our stars. Similar to like the PFL and UFC now. They're gonna have to pay Usman good money to keep him from going to the UFC. But in return, we don't want you to just fuck off once you made like the bag, once you made your, couple 100,000, now you just fuck off and go anyway, So it's a difficult spot, and it's kind of like, it's become this thing where the EFC is just this platform to build your career and your record to go overseas, which is very sad, because it would be amazing if we had our own promotion where guys never had to leave to go fight overseas. They could just fight here, make good money, build a huge fan base in their own country with their own people. It's like, that is the dream, like similar to what they're doing in, where is it? Octagon MMA. Like, I think it's Poland. Like, the Polish fighters there never like need to leave or go to the UFC. They are massive stars. They are massive stars there, and they don't need to fight anywhere else. because they're getting paid well, they're making huge fan base, they're getting massive commercial contracts because of their fan base. That is amazing. If we could do that here, that would be awesome. Like that's exactly what we would like to see. Well, I would like to see locally, because the reality is that like unless you do that and you keep sort of the excitement around being in the EFC, the talent just leaves. You get like one guy with a bit of talent, then he leaves, and then he goes somewhere else where he's not really ready, or like they'll go to like an obscure place in the Middle East, and go there and fight like a really tough guy that they're not ready for, lose, and then have to come back to the UFC, and then like they got a mark on their record against like a guy that isn't like great but like very experienced. And so that it's just really like difficult to cross over from like, okay, fighting in the EFC to now going to the UFC and winning. Very few people have done that. Leave the EFC and their very first fight in the UFC, they win. Very few people have done that. And so there's obviously a massive gap there, right? Now, we can't just, like I spoke about in the last podcast, we can't just rely on exceptions. There needs to be something that keeps the guys in the EFC to develop that level, to raise the entire EFC's level so that you've got like really, really high level fights going on. That when they do cross over to like now they get signed to the UFC, it's not like, maybe he's going to win on his first fight or maybe he's just going to get fucking murked, which we've seen a lot of. So, it's not the EFC's job to just produce champions. It's to produce fighters that can compete at the PFL and the UFC internationally. That should be the EFC's job. Produce fighters that can. Now there have only been 4 fighters from the EFC that have gone there and won in the UFC, right? Myself, Trickus, who's done exceptionally well, Cameron Simon, Gareth McLennan. Every other South African fighter from the EFC that has gone to the UFC has lost. I think Champion Dolce might have won one. I think Champion Dolce won one as well. Okay, so 5. There's 5 guys that have left the EFC to the UFC and have won. Okay, now that's not a very high conversion rate if you compare it to like what's the UK promotion? I forget it. Can't think of it right now. But if you compare it to other, like LFA, for instance, like LFA, which is in the US, like the amount of people that fight in LFA that go to the UFC and win in the UFC is it's a very high number. So it'd be interesting to see if we can do something about that. I also think like a lot of fighters are becoming pros too soon. And it's like what I spoke about in my last podcast. It's just like the amateur system needs to change. It just needs to change to make better potential professionals, not better amateurs, because that's all it is right now. It's like really good amateurs. Like the amateur fights are great, but it's in a rule set that's not conducive towards being a pro. And then these guys, they like get 10 amateur fights, they're 10-0, and then they become pros and they go have their first real fucking fights and take an elbow to the dome or like get kneed in the face and fight for 5 minutes and they gas in like 2 rounds. And they're like, oh fuck, and now they've lost their first fight. And they were so good as an amateur. You see it so often. Oh my God. You see it all the time. These guys that are really great amateurs and they go to pro and they're like, can't fucking win. It's just like, that's a problem, And then we just kind of get stuck in the same fucking place that we've been in for the last couple of years. Like, EFC have such an awesome position to be like, I don't even know like the word for it is. It's just like there's such a good position for them to like make stars here, and prepare these guys to be like, we know that if you become EFC champion, it should be obvious. If you become EFC champion, you can go to the UFC. That's kind of like where the benchmark should be. Not you become EFC champion and like some guy that's like 3-2 comes in and fights and beats you. Like that's just not that can't happen. That just can't happen. So, I really want to see the UFC go back to the fucking golden days. Like everyone thinks like I'm critical of them. I am, because of what I expect from them. I expect so much more. So I'm hypercritical, of course. But I'm also hypercritical because I am a massive fan of the UFC. I'm a fan of it. I want to see it the way it was. Their last event in Cape Town was fucking unbelievable. I can't praise it enough. It was so awesome. It was every fight was sick. It was like awesome fights to watch. Like just keep doing that. Just keep doing that. Not a bunch of like bullshit cards and a bunch of like bullshit fights just to fill up bills with like guys that like no one gives a fuck about watching. It's just like like I don't know. Anyway, that's my opinion. uh, the next thing I'm gonna talk about is Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry. Now, Ian Garry is an absolute ponce, but he can fight. He's not a bad fighter. He's a good fighter. It's going to be a battle of distance management and sustained chain wrestling, because we know that as good as Ian Garry might be on the ground, and he speaks Portuguese and like Islam Makhachev's a motherfucker on the ground. Like we all know that. We all know that if Islam gets you down, it's going to suck. So Ian Garry's routes to victory are going to be long range striking and movement. Counter wrestling. Probably a lot of I would assume like front kicks and cross straight shots to the body to stop the level change. Trying to potentially take some of the wind out of Islam's sails, which no one's been able to do except maybe Volkanovski. Building damage without giving away position is going to be very, very, very tough for Ian Garry to do against a guy like Islam. Now, we all know what Islam's going to do. We all know what he's going to do. He's going to stand on the feet for a little bit, find his range. He's going to throw a couple shots, and he's going to get a hold of him, and he's going to smother him. And he's going to make him work so hard to get back up to his feet, if he gets back up to his feet, without getting caught in a submission or taking a lot of damage while coming up. It's like the big difference here is like anyone at that level is going to will be able to defend a takedown, right? Like that should be sort of obvious. You can defend that first shot, but the big difference is defending a shot versus defending the shot, then the pressure that follows, and then the chain wrestling and the entire sequence that eventually leads you to be on the ground. That is a whole nother thing, and one of the best people in the world to do it is the guy like Islam Makhachev. The initial shot will make the contact, right? So he's going to make contact on the initial shot, and I'm sure Ian will be able to stuff that first shot, But then the reshot comes, and then now he's into that body lock. Now he's tied around your waist, and he's pushing you up against the fence. He's pinning you against the fence. Now you're trying to get off the fence with him. How effective is Ian Garry going to be against that? And eventually, if he does get up, how's he going to stop the mat return? How's he going to stop the second mat return? How's he going to work his second stand-up attempt? It's going to be really, really tough for Ian Garry. I don't see him winning this fight at all. I just don't see any way that he's going to win this fight. I don't believe he's a big enough puncher to like put Islam out completely with one shot. And I think like every shot he throws, Islam's going to follow up with contact, and it's going to be a problem. I like seeing these guys jump divisions. Now I wish the divisions weren't as big. I wish they were a little bit smaller. Because like jumping from like lightweight, which is 70 kg to welterweight 77, that's a big jump. There should be like maybe a 74 kg or 75 kg, 74 kg division, so that like guys can jump between these divisions like that, and they could win 3 titles without going from like lightweight, which is 70, to welterweight, which is 77, then middleweight, which is 84 kilograms. Like that is a massive jump. So it would be quite cool to see more divisions so that guys can fight more. I enjoy seeing like champions fight champions. Like it's great. It's good to see, and it's super exciting. It brings a lot of eyes. You know, I think that's how you build stars. Guys that just move up divisions to just fuck everyone up. Like Alex Pereira was like amazing, like middleweight, light heavyweight, and he went for the heavyweight title. Obviously, that didn't work out for him, but you want to see that shit. You want to see that. That's I another fight that is super interesting is Mateus Gamrot versus Salkhalid, Salkhalid, whatever. I don't even know how to say his name. Um, I think like Gamrot has become like sort of like a gatekeeper in the lightweight division. Because like he's really talented, but like the best guys get past him and then they ultimately get to like the top. I don't think it's like everyone like thinks like the term gatekeeper is like a bad term. But like I don't think it is. I think it's like you're the fucking benchmark for like the champion. Like you're the benchmark to test prospects up against if you think they can maybe go for a title. You are the standard. You are the standard. You're just not of championship level yet. But you are the fucking standard for like who is eligible to fight for titles. And so I think Mateus Gamrot is basically that guy right now. Like he is right there. He is not good enough to fight for the title, right? He has lost a couple times, but he is still so good that if you can't beat him, there's no fucking ways you're gonna fight for the title. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like you got experienced contenders. That's basically what these gatekeepers are. If you lose to an established contender, it'll reveal a lot more about you than another like win against like a fucking mid-tier guy. Yeah. So what I would tell the fighter in to sort of sum everything up here, what I would tell Usman Nurmagomedov, my opinion to Usman Nurmagomedov, who has Khabib in his corner, but my opinion would be in choosing his next promotion would be stick with the PFL, make as much money as you can, have as much influence on how they promote you, your matchups, your sort of commercial direction. Now, especially with the merger of MVP, make as much money as you can for the next contract. Maybe it's 4 fights, defend your title 4 more times. Great. After that year to 2-year period, renegotiate. Now you can still go to the UFC. You can still go do the legacy thing. So that would be my opinion. My opinion or my advice to Ian Garry would be, I hope to God that you at least brought one guy from that region, the Caucasus region, that wrestles and grapples like that into your camp so that you can feel how they sequence things. Because I know I've trained with a few guys from like Chechnya, Dagestan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Georgia. The way that they grapple is a style in like on its own. It's not jiu-jitsu, it's not wrestling, it's not necessarily sambo, because I've grappled a few guys that are Russian that do Russian sambo. It's a whole thing on its own. It's its own style, and you have to actually physically feel it to understand what it is. And so I hope he brought someone in that is from that region that grapples like that for this camp. And what I would tell, a guy that fights at the EFC that is on the cusp of making the move to go to the UFC or to another big promotion is, have you really been tested in the UFC? Now, have you fought international fighters? Those international fighters, where have they fought? Because it's all good fighting a guy from Brazil who's like 16 and 10, but he's fought nobody that's fought He hasn't fought in any major promotion. He's fought a local Brazilian promotion, maybe one or two like Middle Eastern promotions, but like nothing, nowhere important. Um, who have you fought? That would be like a big one. Have you been tested? Is the idea of legacy more important, or the idea of making as much money more important? Because then you don't necessarily have to jump into the UFC. You can go to the PFL. You can go to, different promotions and make good money without chasing the idea of legacy. Now, obviously, if you're a legacy fighter, the UFC is where it is. If you want to be truly the best in the world, considered the best in the world, not just by the fans but by your peers, the UFC is where it is. So, you know, you need to make sure that you understand these things when you get to that point, so that when you get to that point and you get these options coming through, you don't just take a decision or make a decision because of the perceived idea. Like you get UFC contract offer and you're 10-0, but you fought fucking nobody. You're gonna have it's gonna be tough. Your first fight's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a rude awakening in the UFC. This idea of like padding your record to get to the UFC is a bad idea, because it will get exploited when you do go there. So that's the immediate decision. It's just have a plan about before that happens. The biggest risk is that you take a 10-0 record, you go to the UFC, you fight like entry level guys, you lose a bunch of times, and now you're like 10-3, but you've lost to like entry level fighters. That sets you back 2 years, 3 years, because now you're gonna have to fight a bunch of times. You're gonna have to get like a positive record in the UFC first. You have to get to like 5 wins in a row before anyone's gonna notice you or anyone's gonna talk about you again. So that's the biggest risk, is that taking that jump too soon. And the non-negotiable conditions on signing to a bigger promotion is how much you are going to make within that contract. That is, you can't just be like, oh, it's the UFC, I'm going to take some, just sign and go. Like, you need to understand, like, how much money can you make wherever you are fighting locally. So even if it's at the EFC, but you get to fight 3 times a year and you're making X amount of money, and that's how much money you're going to make in a year, versus going to the UFC and making a good amount of money on your first fight, but then if you lose, and then you got to pay international taxes and all that stuff, then if you lose, you're going to be stuck on that same amount, and now that you've lost, they're probably going to use you as a feeder, and then you're going to fight 4 times, maybe make a little bit of money, get cut, and then have to go back, and now your value as a fighter has dropped quite a bit. So you need to make sure that when you do get those contracts, that it's exactly what you want it to be. Be bold and take the stand and back yourself. You as tough as it is, because it does feel like you never really have control of your own career. You are in control of your career, so you need to make sure that when you are ready to take that next step, that you have as much control of the direction that you take, and don't let anyone talk you out of the decision that you feel is right for you. And on next week's episode of Therapy with Thon, but yeah, basically just make the right decision for you, not for anything else, not for anything that anyone else is telling you. Oh, it's just promotional. It's like, bro, do what's right for you where you are right now. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I will be back next week with a new guest. So stay tuned, and please like, subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next in the comments. Peace.